everybody? Thanks for stopping by. Super stoked about the topic of the day, which we'll be getting into shortly. Alrighty, let's get this party started. Alright. And let me just get rid of the countdown timer. There we go. Alright, welcome to Brand Alchemy, everybody. This is the weekly live stream where I'm basically sharing everything that I know and have learned in the realms of branding, business, and creativity. So I'm really excited about this series, and particularly excited about today's episode, which is episode 2. This is going to be about an hour-long stream. And before I even talk about what the topic of today is. So our topic of today is what has enabled visionaries, creatives, innovators, geniuses of all ages to change the world around them. It's what allowed this guy right here to be his genius self and to affect the world in the way that he did. Same with this guy. I mean, look at the amount of things that Nikola Tesla created in his time is like absolutely staggering. There's Amelia Earhart. She was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean in an airplane. And pretty much all of these people that I'm showing you here, like, kind of did what would be considered by most people impossible. And really what they did is they had an ability to turn their thoughts into things, to turn their imagination and their dreams into tangible reality. No matter what their field is, whether they're Disney making cartoons or Gandhi. I mean, think about what Gandhi did. He got Britain to leave India, like, without any force at all. They just left. Like, that's never happened before, right? Like, that's never happened before. It's never happened since. But somebody did it. Same with this woman. She started out super poor, and I mean, look at her now. And then this guy, he created the computer that I'm streaming with right now. So what do all these people have in common? Well, the thing that I've noticed, they have a lot of things in common, but one thing that I've noticed is that they have vision, right? They have vision, and particularly, not only do they have vision, but they have the ability to make that vision real. But it starts with vision. We need to have a vision in order to make the vision real, right? And vision is really, I like to think of vision as a compass. It sets our true north, so to speak. Sets the direction for whatever we're doing or creating. There really is no greater power, in my opinion, than the power or ability to turn your thoughts into things, right? To have an idea and then to make that idea real in a very beautiful way that changes people's lives in some way, makes the world a better place. And in my opinion, artists are such a great example of a visionary, somebody that has an idea or an impulse, a creative impulse, and then they make it real, whatever their medium is. And I see artists as going far beyond just the visual paint medium. I mean, to me, really, an artist is just defined as anybody that turns their thoughts into things, really. So whether you're an artist or a creator, media creator, or perhaps a storyteller, or even a movement maker, all of these people are led by their vision, by vision. And all these people are also just people, right? Whether it's Steve Jobs or an artist or anybody, at the end of the day, we're all just people. But it's standing out and having like the courage to make our visions real, to actually dream a worthy dream, and then to actually take the action to make that real. It's a tall order because it requires that we step out of the norm and to find our own unique path and to develop our own voice. And this is something that is not taught to us. It's actually the exact opposite of what is taught to us, which is to fit in and just do our job, whatever that might be, in the factory. So, how do we turn visions into reality? And that's what today's live stream is all about. How do we turn our visions into reality? How do we turn our thoughts into things? So, I know a lot of us are familiar with the law of attraction. And the common belief, or I guess the common assumption, especially when people first learn about law of attraction, is this idea of like, oh, all we have to do is just like have a vision, have a dream, crystallize it in our mind, what we want, and then the law of attraction will make it happen. And I believe that that's partially true, but it's really missing. There's two pieces to that puzzle, and the kind of common belief about just think your dreams real or whatever, it's just a half of the puzzle. Like, it is indeed very, very important to have a dream, to have a vision, but that's only half the piece. So what are these two pieces? Well, one of them is vision, right, and the other one is action. If we don't, vision without action is just fantasy, which is nice. I like fantasy and dreams, but it's not here in the 3D space. It influences the 3D space, as we'll see, but it doesn't actually get grounded or materialize. And so even you might be in your fantasy, but it's not going to be able to be shared unless there's action behind it. So on the flip side to that, is what's action without vision, right? Action without vision it's fruitless. It's absolutely fruitless. It's something's happening. There's things happening in the 3D space, but it's never quite becoming what it could truly become. And I know that I've experienced both sides of this, and many times in my life, of dreaming big and having huge aspirations and knowing what's possible for myself, but just for one reason or another, not taking the proper action. Part of me doing this whole series is me taking that action, right? Time to do. And then on the flip side, for me personally, I've had many experiences where I've created business ventures or projects or done work that was a lot of work, like lots of work, hard work. And then at the end of it, it just sort of felt fruitless. And if I trace it back, I can see quite clearly that I didn't have, if I either didn't have a clear enough vision to guide me in the right direction, or the vision wasn't the right vision, because not all visions are created equally, as we'll soon see. So if vision without action is fantasy, and action without vision is a waste of time, fruitless, then action plus vision is, in my opinion, creativity or creation. So this ability to have a vision and then to make that vision actually become real, as far as I'm concerned, that is the role of the magician. That is what a magician does, right? Sort of makes the impossible possible, makes dreams into reality. Now, oftentimes when we think of magicians, we think about like a guy on the stage, like pulling rabbits out of a hat, or like some kind of really weird, esoteric, like spirit summoning type stuff. But in my opinion, we're surrounded by modern day magicians everywhere we go, and we saw some of them in the beginning of the presentation here. But to me, anybody that turns their thoughts into things is a magician. Artists, creators, right? That's the definition. Just regular people. Anybody, if you have a vision and then you can make that vision come real, that's an act of magic as far as I'm concerned, an act of creation. So that's all fine and good. We have the ability as humans to dream and to create. But the problem is that most of us don't do either of those things. And we suffer because of it, unfortunately. And then when we do set out to start dreaming and creating, particularly the action part, what ends up happening is we find that there's this evil, an enemy or a sort of evil lurking around every corner. And this thing is like, it has stopped me so many times. And you know, it's one of those things that never really goes away in the creative process, but it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be dealt with at every moment, and that thing is resistance. So Stephen Pressfield has a book called The War of Art, and he really spearheaded this idea of creative resistance, and how there's every artist, every creator, every magician, you know, anybody that's trying to create something or do something meaningful is gonna meet this resistance. You know, it creeps in every which way, and it's like that little voice that says, just give up, just stop, this is bullshit, you don't know anything, just you know, call it quits. And it's there when we go to sleep, and it's there when we wake up. It's just always there. And many, you know, he likens it as like slaying the dragon, and it's a dragon that is not slayed just once. It's like constantly needing to be dealt with, and it's like the battle is renewed every day. Every time you sit down to write or create or whatever it is that you're doing or trying to do, that dragon's going to be there, and it's real. I feel it, and it's, you know, it can be really challenging, but having the awareness that it's there is a huge part of the puzzle in getting over it. So one of the sneaky little things that the dragon does is it acts as us. You know, it doesn't show up like a big scary dragon. It actually shows up usually like an innocent thought of like, who am I to teach this? Who am I to do this? Who am I to create? You know, who am I to stand out? Who am I to be seen? That's what the dragon does. That's what the resistance does. Anytime you have that sort of thing, that's just resistance popping up. And it really helps to externalize and sort of turn it into an enemy of sorts. So Stephen Pressfield says, if you find yourself asking yourself and your friends, am I really a writer? Am I really an artist? Chances are you are. The counterfeit innovator is wildly self-confident. The real one is scared to death. So this is just, I mean, this guy is like an extremely prolific writer, and he's still scared, right? I'm scared. I was scared shitless pressing the go live button right here. But you know what? This is like me sitting here doing this is I know this is what I need to do to move forward. The alternative is for me to not do this and to just keep doing what I've been doing, which has been not getting me to where I want to be in my life. So yes, it's scary. Yes, the dragon's real. And there's really, there's two options. This is either put it in its place or be dominated by it. So when we decide to make our dreams real, first of all, to even accept our dreams, and then secondly, to make them real, which is like even harder. I feel like most of us, especially people that I know, a lot of you guys that are here, are really good dreamers. Like we can see quite clearly the way that we want the world to be, right? Like there's no vagueness there. The problem is that most of us like just have no idea how to even start. Well, I think we do know how to start. We're just scared, right? We're scared of being real. We're scared of being ourselves. Scared of being seen. We're scared of the dragon, and it's fucking winning most of the time, but it doesn't have to. So once we like start the journey and commit to slaying the dragon, and commit to ourselves, and commit to our art, and commit to our audience, and just commit to being a magician, a creator, what we need to do is we really, really need to trust the process. Okay. Not only do we need to trust the process, but we need to love the process. Okay. Like process is everything. And this is something I've been learning as an artist and a creator. It's so easy to get fixated on the outcome, right? It's so easy to get fixated on the dream or the vision. And then all of the process, the creative act itself becomes this sort of like secondary thought, or this like necessary hardship, pain in the ass thing that you don't like doing in order to get to the vision, in order to get to the dream. But the thing is that there's this really interesting paradox here, is that if we go after our dream, our vision, with action, but the action isn't joyful and authentic, it's just a means to an end, then that's not going to work either. So it's almost like what happens is that when we get it all set up right, and we have the right vision and right action, then the vision and the action are kind of one and the same. It's like we find salvation in the creative process itself, and it's not about getting to the destination. It's about the journey. We all know that. We've all heard that. But we all need to be reminded of it too. We must do work for its own sake, not for fortune or attention or applause, or even for outcome. Just work to work. So when we do our work for its own sake, whether it's our inner personal work or our outer creative work, and in my opinion, those are inextricably linked. When we do that and we step into this role and really take responsibility for our reality and our experience and our creativity in our lives, then we begin the journey of complete personal transformation. We begin this journey of becoming the symbolic phoenix that rises out of the ashes of its own transformation. Now, this is I really like this image because, look at this. So here we have this dragon, and it's like this big, mean, scary dragon, and it's, this little dude right here. Well, what happens when he decides to go to face the dragon and to, do what he's here to do? Then this is what happens. And now this is the dude and there's the dragon. So the dragon's been put in its place. It's not dead. It's just it's like, it's in the dungeon where it belongs, It's still it's still going to be there kind of whispering, but like at this point, like it doesn't really, it loses its power. Okay. So this is basically symbolizing overcoming of the animal nature. And the animal nature, let's just say, is it's the part of ourself that succumbs to fear, right? It's the part of ourselves that hides and, you know, just wants to go and hide under a rock and just fit in and just blend in and like never be seen. And, you know, I don't want to have to think about anything or take responsibility for anything, you know, versus taking full responsibility for our reality, for our creation, and really embodying the divine part of being a human, the godly part of being a human, which is creatorship. You know, I mean, all the like scripture and stuff says that we're made in God's image, which is to say we are godlike. We're not God, but we're godlike. We have the ability to create. That's fucking profound. Like, what? And it's a huge opportunity. Resistance comes when you do, right? Which is to say, when you show up, do your work, resistance is going to be sitting there waiting for you. This dragon is going to be like, all right, do you really have what it takes, right? Do you really want this bad enough? Are you willing to go through this transformation in order to make your dreams become real? And I think you know, ultimately, we all are in our hearts of hearts. There's a lot of layers of fear and conditioning and programming and a lot of just baggage and shit that's been built up along the way. But we are all capable of being powerful creators. It's just natural human thing. So resistance comes when you do. Any act that rejects immediate gratification in favor of long-term growth, health, or integrity. Any act that derives from our higher nature instead of our lower. Boom, right? Doing deep work, you know, putting yourself out there and playing the long game, which is what I'm playing, you know. I'm looking at like the next 10 years, and in many ways, like facing my fears and getting on this stage, so to speak, I'm sort of sacrificing the immediate gratification. Like, it doesn't matter to me if anybody shows up or if anybody listens. What matters is that I'm showing up and doing the work, and the work is the point. And I hope it's super helpful, and I hope that community builds around this, and part of me knows that it will, but that's not ultimately why. It's the reason I'm doing this is for my own transformation, right? My own transformation, and understanding that by transforming myself, I'm going to inspire others to transform around me, and that's how the world can change. Not by, you know, voting in some guy to like do political policies and stuff. Like, it's just missing the point. So I believe that, like, as a global society, and particularly the United States, like, we have a huge identity crisis, and we see this showing up in many, many ways with like identity politics and all, you know, just like people are experimenting with transformation of changing their identity, whether it's going from male to female, or, you know, gay to straight, or straight to gay, or maybe it's, you know, from whatever to whatever. You know, I feel like we have this innate drive to transform, to become something else, to be, and we see that showing up all over the place. And I think that the reason that it's showing up the way that it's showing up, the reason it's an identity crisis, is because we were sort of trained out of ourselves. You know, our true identity, our true desires, our true soul, right, was sort of like choked out from, you know, from the moment we like got to, you know, school, basically. So I think that, well, a lot of this has to do with the fact that, again, we've all been rigorously trained to be who we're not. So this is like a, you know, a little factory type of thing right here. And did you know that the current school system that we have was actually, so the current school system we have, apparently it was actually started by the KKK, or they had kind of like seeded it, because a lot of children were taking up factory jobs, and it was squeezing out, you know, older men that also wanted factory jobs. So they wanted the kids out of the factory so they could have their jobs. So what they did is they created a school system that was meant to basically train kids to be better factory workers, so that when they grow up and they become 16, 17, 18 or whatever, they're ready to be like the perfect factory worker ever, right? And so standardized testing, all these things, the entire school system is literally I'm not making this up, like look it up. It's literally engineered to create compliancy. You know, it's basically engineered to make people just sit down, shut up, take orders, don't ask questions, do not learn who you are, just accept what we tell you and go get a job. That's it. And if you just do that, then, you know, a lot of rich people are super happy. But, you know, here's another thing, like TV, it's everywhere, right? It's no wonder we're having an identity crisis. No wonder we're all feeling lost in some way. Because it's, you know, it's being really drilled in. But fortunately, there is a way out. There is a way to sort of sidestep and to remember and embody who we are and to do what we're here to do. There's a way to undo the fakeness and to uncover what's good, true, and beautiful. And how we do that is by following the path of least resistance. So, you know, we saw up here, what's the enemy to like making your dreams come real? Resistance. So what do? We need to follow the path of least resistance. Now, this is an interesting concept, this path of least resistance. It's there's a book by Robert Fritz, I believe it is, and it's called The Path of Least Resistance. And the idea is essentially that we're always taking the path of least resistance. Like right now, you're taking the path of least resistance. However you sort of show up in life is the path of least resistance. And our patterns and habits are the paths of least resistance. That's why they happen. It's the easiest thing to have happen because they're habitual. You know, there's a sort of like belief system and a structure and habits that are built up around this. And so if the path of least resistance, let's just say currently hypothetically, if my path of least resistance is that I'm in a habit of not creating or not putting myself out there, and that's the path of least resistance. The whole structure is set up to make that the thing that happens. But if we change we can divert the stream somehow by building different structures, and diverting that stream changes that path of least resistance. So there's a key there, is that we have to figure out how to change our belief systems and sort of mental structures in order to accommodate different ways of being. We're going to get deeper into this here momentarily. Now, who's really in charge here, right? This is a really important thing to like address. Who's in charge of our lives? Is it the government? Is it me? Is it my parents? Is it my wife? You know, like who's in charge of my life, right? Well, it's not the government. Even though government literally means mind control, government, to govern the mind. That's an interesting little tidbit. But our lives are actually governed by our minds. So this is interesting, right? Government means mind control, but the irony is that the government's not actually in control. We are. Our minds are in charge. But the problem is that whatever our, patterns and habits are and our way of being is the path of least resistance for us in that moment. And so that's going to dictate, it's just, we're going to keep getting more of the same unless we change the structure somehow. We divert the flow, right? But the good news is that it's all in our minds, right? The problem is in our minds, but so is the solution. It's not outside. So there's patterns, these mental patterns, right? And these patterns show up like thoughts that you have a lot about yourself, whether they're good thoughts or bad thoughts. I mean, this pattern, they're not good or bad. It's just like what we tell ourselves every day creates patterns, what we have been told, who we surround ourselves with, the things that kind of are impressed over and over and over again develop patterns. And that creates a flow of least resistance. It creates a certain a certain flow. So again, patterns, and then we have structures, which are similar but different. The patterns are just things that kind of happen again and again. The structures are ways of basically shaping the way that these patterns show up. A really important thing to realize too is like at the center of this is belief as well, right? And facts and beliefs are two different things, and they don't really like need to work together. And this is why it's like totally a waste of time and pointless to try to like change somebody's political opinion or something, right? Because it's not based on fact. Like our preferences are like never really based on fact, even if we tell ourselves that they are. Everything that we believe is just that, it's a belief, right? And it's flexible and malleable, and facts don't, beliefs are immune to facts, right? I mean, if you ever tried to change somebody's mind about something that they're convinced or and believe in, like, I'm saying it's just impossible. So again, this idea of structure, we can create structures in our life to enable us to have forward movement, right? And if the structures that are in our life are counter to forward movement, then we're going to have problems. The problem is that most of us don't even realize the structures and patterns that we have, belief system structures and patterns that we have that might be holding us back. All right, so in the book, The Path of Least Resistance, there's a concept called creative tension. And it's likened to a bow and arrow, right? Like here we can see there's a vision, which is the target, right? And then the action is the actual shooting of the arrow. But then it's the aiming and the structure of the bow and all of that is what sort of like gets the whole situation to be the right situation for the arrow to hit the target, right? If he has the wrong structure, maybe the bow and arrow doesn't work. It doesn't create the right tension, or it's like aimed in the wrong direction, or something like that. But the idea here is that this creative tension can really propel us forward. And so creative tension is defined as basically what happens when you have a vision of the way you want your life to be or your business or whatever it is, and then you have a reality, okay? And the creative tension starts when there's clarity on both of those things, because the vision is like off in the distance and the reality is here and now. But when we hold those two in our hearts and minds solidly, then it creates the tension that propels us forward. Just like the tension in the bow is when he releases and lets go. I mean, that's a great analogy there. When he finally surrenders and lets go with the right structures in place, the arrow is just gonna straight to the target. So all right, so here's the question, is that what do you truly want? Like, what is the target that you're going for? What is your vision? And the vision for a business or a brand or just personal life or anything, it really is based in desire. And I think desire has a bit of a bad rap, because I feel like there's a difference between like egoic short-term desires and like higher sort of soul calling desires that come from a deeper place, a deeper yearning. And those are the types of visions that I feel like are worth going after, not just like the piddly just kind of short-term gain human stuff, kind of the small games. I think our souls are going to be more motivated by something that speaks directly to it. So it's, this whole process of creating this tension, we have to start by saying, okay, where are we going? What do I want? Right? This guy wants to hit the target. He's not necessarily attached to it, but he's intending, he's setting his vision, his sights on that target. That's what he wants. So here's a really key point. If you limit your choice only to what seems possible or reasonable, You disconnect yourself from what you truly want, and all that's left is a compromise. Oh my God, it's so true. So true. So this is important, is that like, if it's so crucial for me as an individual to clarify what I truly want and why I'm doing this, because that's going to be what motivates me to keep going when times get tough, and they always do. There's tests at every corner. So once we understand what we want and we're truly honest about it, now here's the thing: is that we tend to undersell ourselves on what we want. You know, we'll pick something like, I just want to be happy, or I just want to be healthy, or, you know, I just want to have enough money to, you know, not have to worry about money. A lot of times our wants are actually this sort of like what we don't want rather than what we do want. And then, again, this is part of the programming, the school system. It's we're not taught to actually discover what we truly want on a soul level. You know, we're taught to just pick from the menu that's given to us, which is, you know, generally terribly unhealthy food in a metaphorical sense. So once we admit to ourselves like what we actually want and what's worthy of going after and taking actions to make real, then we need to understand, what is our current reality? Like, okay, we have this desire, this dream. Now, where are we now? What is actually truly real now? What resources do we have? Talents do we have? Network? You know, what actual like physical, tangible stuff do we have that's going to help make this thing real? Now, there's a problem here too, is that oftentimes, in the same way that we tend to not actually admit to ourselves what we want, and we play the desire game really small, then on the flip side, we tend to overemphasize where we actually are, and we kind of like bullshit ourselves and tell ourselves that we're actually like living out our dreams or whatever when we're not, or that maybe, you know, we're further along our path when we're not. Or on the flip side of that, we'll undervalue. So like a lot of artists and really talented people tend to undervalue their current reality of what they the value that they actually hold in their hands right now. And then people that are just starting out tend to overshoot where they're currently at, and then, you know, then they get burnt out. So our job in this life is not to shape ourselves into some ideal that we imagine we ought to be, but to find out who we already are and become it. So again, this kind of feels like a bit of a contradiction, because we're talking about deciding what we want and then, you know, seeing what we have to get it, and then taking actions to close that gap, right? So that, again, the creative tension is caused by the distance between the vision and the reality. And the greater the distance, the greater the tension, which can be very uncomfortable, but the more tension, the more energy there is to catapult you and launch you forward. If you're able to send the dragon back to his bedroom for timeout. So the tension is our friend, even though it can be uncomfortable. But what happens is that when we are honest with ourselves about what we want, and we're honest about ourselves with where we are, and we start taking steps, the gap starts to close, and we start to build momentum. And that momentum builds and builds and builds. And then before we know it, we've achieved our goal, and then we're on to the next thing. So when it comes to like deciding what we want, you know, for me, my thing over the last 10 years, really, my whole journey leading up to this week, this week of launching my personal brand, launching this Brand Alchemy series, live stream series, and all of it. What I've really wanted is to find my right place, my right purpose. Like, you know, I've always been asking myself the question, like, what am I here to do? You know, I've had all these different interests and talents and things, and I just like was always kind of feeling like I was missing something. But I think that, you know, when we're talking about what we want, it's not like who do we want to be, it's not who do I want to be. And maybe that's the question I was asking myself, and I can see clearly that's the wrong question to be asking. And just like he says here, it's not about shaping ourselves into some ideal, putting on makeup and pretending to be something that we're not because we want it, right? That's ego stuff. What he's talking about here is accepting who we already are. And it's not, I don't want to be me. I already am me, but I do have desires and I have purpose for being me. But it's kind of like that self-acceptance, which is this: what is your current reality? Like, who are you? Like, what are you? What is your reality? Your tangible, physical, emotional reality. So this is a concept called ikigai, which is basically a Japanese word that roughly translates to a reason for being. It's like purpose, And I think that we all ultimately want to find our ikigai, which is the intersection of what we love, what the world needs, what we can be paid for, and what we're good at, right? That's a real purpose right there. That's, in my opinion, soul purpose. And I feel like that we all have this in us inherently. It's just it's not a matter of inventing it or creating it. It's a matter of discovering it. It's a matter of basically peeling off all the layers of bullshit that has been put on us, whether it's from ourselves or from the outside world, peeling all those off and then discovering just like what's right there. So what I'm doing now with my personal brand and with these series, it's just me doing me, in the best way that I can do me right now, based on all the different talents and interests that I have and experience. In the creative process, you do not make choices about what you do not want. You make choices about what you do want. I'm just curious, like how many of you have based big life decisions based on what you don't want rather than what you do want? And I think this is like even more common than it seems. Like, for instance, I just don't want to be poor. I don't want to be poor, so I'll go get a job, right? There's nothing about what I want in that, right? It's just it's an avoidance technique, right? I'll turn this fan off. So the first key is like to stop asking ourselves not what we don't want, but start asking ourselves, what do I actually want? So what do you want? That's the question. That's the question of the day. And the funny thing is that, I mean, still for me, I still am not totally clear on like what my vision is. It's a work in progress. And that's what this week is all about for me. Clarifying my vision and helping you all do the same. The funny thing is that in order to get what we truly want, we have to it requires us to admit what we want. And what we'll find is that when we start to like dig into what we truly want, we start to be like, oh no, can't have that. Oh no, that's silly. We downplay it because we were taught to do that, because the world downplays it. But the thing is that if we don't admit what we want, there's no possible way we're going to get it, period. So just freaking admit it already, right? I'm talking to myself here. The human spirit will not invest itself in a compromise. Let that sink in. I mean, I have never had a, quote, job that my spirit was like, yay, right? Because a job is a compromise for me. Maybe not for everybody. For me. Yeah, the human spirit will not invest itself in a compromise. And that's what I'm feeling for myself is like, I'm starting out 2020 with some really big commitments. Like I'm producing more content. I've already made more content this week than I have in like the last year. Okay. But the thing is that I want to be doing this, right? I want this. Like I really want this. And my soul and spirit knows it. And it's not a compromise. And that's what has been giving me the ability to show up despite the fact that I'm scared shitless every time I have to press go live and, you know, put myself out on the worldwide universe. Yeah, really interesting times we're living in. You know, we all have a stage in our pocket, and we're all scared shitless of it. But that fear can be overcome, and I believe it can be overcome actually quite easily if it just takes the desire to overcome it. You know, again, what do you want? Do you want to actually? That's a good place to start. You know, my vision is to actually admit to myself what I actually want, right? So with all that said, visions are great, but like, how do we take a vision and turn it into a reality, right? How do we do that? Well, believe it or not, the way that we do that is through having dialogue between the conscious and the subconscious mind. So there's more subconscious than conscious. I mean, we could even think in terms of like maybe 10% of our mind, of our sort of consciousness, is what's called conscious. And then 90% of it is the subconscious, which is the part that is hidden beneath the surface. Now, the conscious mind, which is active and fast, it's kind of like all those little thoughts that you're having right now and all the things that we're doing like in this moment is all conscious mind stuff. Okay, it's all happening, it's all fast, it's quick, it's like tweets and little, you know, conscious mind making decisions, you know, all the stuff that happens that you can kind of witness in 3D reality and interact with people. That's all conscious mind stuff. Subconscious mind, on the other hand, is passive and it's slow. It's beneath the surface. You don't really see it. It shows up through the conscious mind because it influences the conscious mind in a very deep way. Basically, everything that we do in our lives, however we show up, is the combination of the subconscious feeding into the conscious, and then that's what shows up. So the key here is that we want to learn to be able to speak to the subconscious, because so all the patterns and structures, belief systems, all values, all these things that we were talking about earlier, they live in the subconscious. That's where they exist, and they take a long time to build up, and they can take a long time to break down. It just kind of like keeps adding little layers, you know. Every time you tell yourself, maybe you think, oh, I'm no good at that, right? Every time you say that, it's like adding a layer of paint to the subconscious, because the subconscious kind of like, it takes cues from the conscious mind. The conscious mind is the thing that's always chattering and talking, and it's speaking, and the subconscious is just listening, and it's taking all those cues and embodying them and integrating them and crystallizing them, and then it's feeding that crystallization and those beliefs, it's feeding it back into the conscious and influencing it. So we have this like cycle, right? And unfortunately what happens is that we get caught in a vicious cycle where the subconscious is telling the conscious what it can't do and limiting it, and then the conscious is then feeding that limitation back to the subconscious, and then it's just like getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So the process of creativity and making our dreams become real and turning thoughts into things is really, the key is to learn to be more intentional and learn to work with the subconscious rather than just be ruled by it. Because we're either working with it or we're just being ruled by it, straight up. Ignore this at your peril. So the key, again, it's we need to speak to the subconscious, and like, well, how do we do that, you know? So interestingly, magic, right? Like, what is magic? Well, what I've learned magic is, astrology, all of these sort of like esoteric arts, so to speak, it's all just an elaborate set of systems through which you can utilize to speak to the subconscious. That's it. That's all it is. Magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will, says Aleister Crowley. Which is to say, magic is a science of art, of making things happen by thinking about them, right? Or, having an idea and then making it happen. So in order to do this, we need to understand how we need to understand how our brain works, right? We were never taught this stuff. We were never taught how to to come in control with our mind, right? We're just letting our minds control us, and then that control is being controlled by something else, right? But the power is always in your skull, right? It's always in you. So magic, astrology, occultism, all these things, it's just ancient, esoteric, divine psychology. That's all it is. So it's super duper important to be able to hold these visions, right? To hold these visions while we work them out in the physical realm, right? It's kind of like the vision can be created in an instant and held and maintained, but the process of materialization, it takes time and it takes persistence and we have to hold that vision. So the key is to make the vision, as once we have an idea of what it is, then we want to, at first we can really explore and just try things on. A lot of times what I do is I'll just get out a sheet and just mash out, start a timer 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then mash out 10 ideas, just good ideas, bad ideas, shit ideas, whatever, just 10 ideas. And then out of that list, underscore the top 3, and then the one that feels the most resonant, just grab that and work with that and use that as the next step. So once we have an idea of what our vision is, then we need to begin the process of clarification and crystallization. So it's about creating more and more layers of definition into that vision, getting it more clear, more clear, more clear. We want to get to the point where we can taste it. We want to make learn to make our visions so real in our mind and being that we can taste it, feel it, see it, hear it, live in it. We can close our eyes and inhabit a world that is to be, right? The more clear we can make our vision, the more able we'll be to actually attain it. So once we have that clarified vision, then it's time for action, right? That's here in the earth plane is where not all the action, but a lot of the action, this is where things are happening, right? This is where the huge opportunity is. To make our dreams real, to turn our thoughts into things, to become more divine, more godlike, right? This is our true nature. This is, I believe, as humans, this is literally what we're here to become. Unfortunately, we have an issue. And we all know what the issue is. And we all know something needs to happen. We're just not really sure what needs to happen or how to even begin to, let alone feel and consider and accept the immensity and depth of what's happening. But also to take responsibility in a way and start to create a solution. Our world is on fire, quite literally. And for me it's just more motivation to do what I'm doing, because I know that what I'm doing here is the best thing that I could, it's the best thing I could possibly create, to create as much change as possible that my soul feels is why I'm here, and the right thing for me, so to speak. I personally believe that we're all entering a global near-death experience. For real. The fires are not going to get any better. And, we can ignore that all we want. But, shit's getting real. It's kind of all right, TikTok, what moves are we going to make, right? The thing is that nobody outside of us is going to bring the solution. God's not coming down to fix things. Jesus ain't coming down to fix things. No politician is going to get in office that's going to be able to fix things. No corporation is going to fix things. It's not in their interest to fix things. It's not part of their vision, right? It's not their MO. If not you, if not me, then who, right? And I really believe that by just becoming more human and putting ourselves out there and contributing to this global conversation, this global party, this event that's happening through social media, by participating and being a leader and sharing ourselves, showing ourselves, exposing ourselves, that, in my opinion, is what's going to really make some big change. Armchair activism ain't going to cut it. So it's up to us to create the solution. And how do we do it? By turning our thoughts into things, right? I know it's easier said than done. It requires some guts and courage. It requires a lot of guts and courage. You know, it's dangerous to the mind. It's not actually dangerous to put yourself out there. It feels dangerous though. It does take a leap. But what I've been learning through my process and experimentation with this whole Brand Alchemy thing and all of this is that the more I leap, the more courageous I become. And each of those gaps start to close, and then I start to feel a hunger to want to take bigger leaps. And part of this process too, it's like self-honesty is the key, right? If we're not telling ourselves the truth about ourselves or about the world around us or about anything, then what, Well, I think by definition that would mean that we're living a lie, which is not a good thing. And our whole entire civilization and society is really built on lies and the sort of perversion of truth. That's why we have, instead of a health or a wellness or a healthcare system, we have an illness profit system. And if it's so obvious that that's what it is. It's an illness profit system. Period. Right? That's the truth. But why are we bullshitting ourselves about that? Right? Because we have, as a civilization, got addicted to bullshitting ourselves. I mean, do we actually think that either one of these parties is going to create any sort of viable solution to the real problems that we're facing? Absolutely not. That is not what they're for. These two logos and the whole political system that we have set up right now and the way that it's playing out, it's meant to divide us. It's meant to keep us quiet, right? It's meant to keep us in servitude to it. We serve it, right? All these organizations, governments and things, we're in servitude to it. And it doesn't need to be like that anymore. But if we keep giving it energy, then, well, that's just what we're going to get more of, because that's how it works. The corporations that are causing all this destruction, it's their vision, their whole MO, what they're doing is profit. It's just profit for the sake of profit at all costs, at all and any costs, doesn't matter, just more money. And this is such a great image because this guy's all zenned out on his big stack of money, So what happens when God is money, right? What happens when our vision is just, I want to be a millionaire, right? I want money. What happens when profit is God? Take a look around, It's right there. It's always right there. And I'm not trying to like be a downer here or anything like that, but it's like, in my opinion, and what I'm seeing is like, we're kind of running out of time here, quite literally. I don't think we're out of time, but we're running out of time, right? It's like the time is now. Whatever that means for you, right? Whatever actions and dreams and things you've been putting on the back burner, time is now. Because, if we are to create a better world, and I know that we can, I know this is possible, and it's also my belief that getting there is going to require us to take personal responsibility. That is part of the test, okay? That is part of the test. Becoming powerful creator human beings. It's an individual transformation. No one is going to come and do it for you, right? People can lead the way, but it's up to you to, to step out and to shine and to speak your truth, right? To share your visions, to share your struggles, to share your dreams, right? To be a real human that actually has something important to say. We're as a culture, so addicted to bullshit, memes and like just, meaningless things that like are on it. It's all good. Like, I don't have a problem with fun, but like, it's pretty clear that like, all right, it's time to step up our game a little bit. Let's see if we can be a little more real, a little more genuine, a little more kind, a little more soulful, because that, in my opinion, is what is missing from the world. Just some good old soul. So again, we have the power. Why? Because we are humans and we have a mind that can think and vision and dream and create worlds. Your mind is capable of creating entire universes within it. And actually, as a matter of fact, quantum physics has basically just been proving over and over again that like, actually, this is all in our mind. Or what's in our mind is no more or less real than what's in this 3D realm. It's just on a different plane of existence. But we have the power. It's an individual thing. And the solution is going to come through us as individuals really stepping into our true divine power and coming together as a community of, self-empowered, loving, soulful human beings that have the ability to turn their thoughts into things, beautiful things. You have the power. Just you. Just little old me. Have the power to change the world. Stephen Schwartz has this amazing book called The 8 Laws of Transformation or Change or something like that. And the whole book's about how every great social or global transformation that's happened is always like at the root of it is just like one person that started it or spearheaded it or something like that. Think about Gandhi, for instance. He just decided he had this vision of like, all right, we're gonna get Britain the F out of our country, and he did it. This little old dude got an army to walk away. Think about that. That's possible for everybody. We have way more power than we're being told, and they all know that. And when I say they, I'm just speaking to like the people who are actually conscious of the fact that they're fucking up our planet. That's pretty fucked up, So I feel for those people, but yeah. So here we have it. The world is in our hands. For real. The world's in our hands. What are we going to do with it? We can actually change the world for the better. Straight up. I know this. And how do we do that, right? Well, it all starts with one simple thing. Vision. And my question to you is, what's yours? So, what I would love for you to do over this next week as we flow into the next masterclass next Wednesday is to dream into this, feel into this, write about it, clarify it, develop your vision for your life. Even if you have no interest of like creating a business or anything, like if you're living your life without vision, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. So I encourage you all to seize the day and get clear on what you truly want from a soul level. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for joining me on today's episode of Brand Alchemy. We'll be back next week, Wednesdays. So I am actually going to here. Oops. We're going to do next week. We're going to start next week at 2 p.m. So I've been experimenting with the schedule, and I'm going to shorten the length of these classes a bit. So it looks like right now, yeah, we're about an hour. My goal moving forward is to have each one of these be an hour so that it's easy to digest. It doesn't go on too long, and we can just keep a really nice, consistent rhythm going. So next week we'll do 2 p.m. Be sure to subscribe to the notifications if you want to hear about it. Before I go, if anybody has any questions, I am happy to dive in. If you guys need any support, like now's your moment to get some help. I'll check out some of these comments and see what people are saying. Sharon says, I imagine that our vision is not a static thing and will shift and change as we also shift and change into who we are becoming in the spiral of time. That just gave me goosebumps, Sharon. Thank you. I agree. And that's the thing, is that it's not about getting your vision. That's the funny thing. It's like we have to admit what we truly want, but it's not about getting it. It's about the process of moving towards it. And like you say, Sharon, you're going to, as you move towards it, the target is going to change, because we're going to be like, ooh, you know what? I can go further now. I'm gonna extend that target even further now that I've like mastered this target. So yes, it's a living, breathing thing, and it's good to not get stuck. And ultimately, hopefully, we create visions and then we achieve them, and then when we get to that one, we set a new one, and it's just kind of constantly, naturally evolving and unfolding. Anthony Gibbs, great to see you, Anthony. Thanks, man. There's a lot in this week's video that hit the nail on the head for me, especially with a big decision I was in the middle of making. I decided last night, and this is in confirmation that it was the right decision. Amazing. Oh my God, that makes me so happy. Sweet. I'm super excited to hear about what that decision is. I know it's something awesome coming from you. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time and joining me on this little adventure. Let's bring back, there we go. Hey everybody. So, all right, so yeah, next week we'll be back 2 p.m. Eastern for a 1 hour deep dive yet again. And then this Friday, I'll be doing a live DJ set here on Facebook, and then it'll be posted on SoundCloud after. So that's what comes next for me. All right, guys, thanks so much, and I will see you next time. Have fun envisioning, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot me a text, an email, DM, whatever. I'm here for you. So thank you. Have a good day.